You ever find yourself standing at the altar, hundreds of eyes burning holes through you, and suddenly out of nowhere life punches you in the face? That was me, Maxwell Stone, frozen like a deer in headlights as the organ blared and my bride stood across from me, hidden behind a heavy white veil. You want to know what's wild? This was supposed to be the easiest day of my life. Everything handled, arranged, taken care of. Billionaire's wedding, right? Except when I finally looked through that veil, man, nothing about what I'd been promised was true. My parents? Masters of manipulation. They'd show me photos of someone else, entirely light skin, delicate features, every detail carefully curated to fit the image they wanted for the Stone legacy. But here was this woman, this stranger with dark, beautiful skin and eyes so full of apology it nearly knocked the wind out of me. I remember whispering, "What is this?" But it wasn't even anger. Not yet. It was disbelief, and honestly, I felt like I was the punchline of some cosmic joke. Now, my father, Richard Stone, he was right there in the front row, arms folded, that look he gets when he's about to issue a command. He built our empire from nothing and wasn't about to let me walk away from the deal of a lifetime just because his son got cold feet. The business merger hinged on this wedding. Billions. My future and apparently my pride were on the line. I'm 35, spent my whole damn life doing everything the Stone way, and now I was supposed to marry a woman whose name and face I didn't know until this exact moment. Yeah, that happened. The minister, poor guy, cleared his throat, trying to get things moving. I nodded, what else could I do? There were investors, reporters, business partners. If I ran, the scandal would be nuclear. So I did what I always did. I performed, said my vows, slid on that ring, and when it was time to lift the veil, yeah, my hands were shaking, not gonna lie. But you know what? When I saw her eyes, Amara's eyes, they weren't angry or accusing. They were sad, and in some messed up way, they mirrored everything I was feeling inside. This wasn't about race or beauty or even betrayal. This was about two people used as chess pieces. She whispered, "I'm sorry," and I realized right then, well, we're both prisoners to the same game. Cue the applause, the fake smiles, the avalanche of congratulations. At the reception, I kept Amara close, partly because I didn't want her to disappear, partly because I needed answers. When I finally got her alone, I asked, "Who are you, really?" She said, "I'm Amara Johnson, the real one. The photos? Just a model. My father thought you wouldn't agree if you knew the truth." I told him it was wrong, but he insisted. This merger had to go through. We both laughed bitterly, quietly at the absurdity of it. I could see in that moment she was beautiful, strong, and just as trapped as I was. We made a pact, right there in the middle of the chaos. We'd play along for now, act the part, but ladder together would find out why our families went to such insane lengths. That first night, after the last guest stumbled out and my mother, Eleanor, came by with her fake sweet smile reminding us about expectations, Amara and I just sat side by side, in a room so big it echoed. She took off her veil, let her curls down, and I just stared, realizing how much of my life I'd lived behind other people's projections. We really talked, about our fathers, the pressure, the endless expectations. I learned she wasn't just a pawn, she ran product development at Johnson Tech, 2 degrees from MIT. I realized I judged her, too, not because of her skin, but because I never even thought to ask who she really was. We decided roommates, business partners, allies. 2 years, maybe, until we could unravel this mess and split without destroying everything. But something shifted after that night. I found myself looking for her, wanting to talk, actually enjoying our strange new arrangement. Turns out we had more in common than I'd ever guessed, both engineers at heart, both suffocating under our family names. Our parents, of course, kept trying to pull our strings, calling meetings, pushing us into the spotlight, wanting grandkids before the ink was even dry on the merger. But little by little, we carved out our own space. I took her up to my cabin in the mountains, showed her the side of me that never made the paper, sketching blueprints, cooking my own meals, reading real books. The sky was just starting to darken when a storm hit, and we were trapped together, making dinner, sharing stories by the fire. For the first time in forever, I felt like myself, not Maxwell Stone, the commodity, but Max, a real person. And you know what happens when you drop the act? You start seeing the other person as they are. Amarash was smart, funny, resourceful, more beautiful than I'd let myself admit. Not the fantasy my parents tried to sell me, but the reality that I never knew I wanted. The mountain storm turned that night into something electric. Not romantic in the usual sense, but honest. We went back, more united than before. Our parents tried to flex their power again, this time attacking Amar's division at Johnson Tech, calling it unprofitably a classic move. But I stood up for her in the boardroom, surprised even myself. I'd spent my whole life trying not to rock the boat, but suddenly I couldn't stand the idea of her work, her vision, being torn down because of their greed. That's when I realized the alliance was real. And maybe, just maybe, something more was starting to grow between us. The twist came when we found documents at my cabin evidence our grandfathers had started out as partners, only to be ripped apart by ego and money. Everything our parents had built was based on a lie. So we flipped the script, quietly rallied support, prepped for a full boardroom coup, and when the day came, we laid it all out: photos, contracts, the whole family's secret right there in the open. Our parents tried to bluff, to threaten, but the tide had turned. The board sided with us. We created Stone Johnson Innovations, a new company built on truth, not manipulation. And here's the best part, then, Amara and I were more than partners. We'd fallen for each other for real. She became my best friend, my confidant, the person I wanted to build a future with, not because anyone forced us, but because we chose it every single day. We even got to do things our wire real proposal, a ring that I picked just for her, a vow not made out of duty, but love. Our families? Yeah, they eventually came around. My father took his pride on a world tour. Her dad stuck around, slowly thawing when he saw how happy and successful we were together. Our mothers, well, they'd known more than they let on and ended up being bridges between old wounds and new beginnings. A year after that first shock at the altar, we opened the new headquarters. I designed it myself, filled with natural light, accessible to everyone, a place where innovation could actually mean something. We started a foundation, too, putting real money behind helping people with the tech Amara had pioneered. And when our daughter, Eleanor Rose, was born, I looked at her and realized dude broken the cycle. She'd grow up free, loved, able to choose her own path. I'll never forget lifting that veil and feeling like my life was ending. Turns out, it was just the beginning of something bigger and better than anything I could have planned. So, yes, sometimes the ugliest start can lead to the most beautiful ending. And I gotta ask, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you go along for the ride, take back your story, or run like hell? Tell me, where do you draw the line between duty and happiness? Because I learned, sometimes you gotta tear everything down before you find what really matters.